Well, it's been 2 weeks since Vance Boelter carried out the murder of former House Speaker of the state of Minnesota, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, Mark, as well as the shootings of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette. And while we wait for Boelter to go through his legal procedures, I wanted to pay attention to some of the things that I believe the media is doing to two sides of the issue. The obvious issue that Maga Vance Boelter was definitely driven by MAGA principles to go ahead and try to wipe Democrat legislatures from the state of Minnesota off the face of the earth because they had political beliefs that were opposite of his. And I'm going to go ahead and do that by showing you clips from several interviews, not only from local news affiliate anchors regarding the situation as it unfolded on Saturday, June 14th, but also by showing how some of the approach of the reporters interviewing David Carlson, Vance Boelter's lifelong friend, and how Boelter's basically just kind of aw-shucksing the whole thing regarding Boelter's political beliefs and sort of waving them off and trying to make it look like he's just a good guy who fell into down the wrong rabbit hole. And I'm going to go ahead and show these clips to demonstrate what I feel is an honest, sort of orchestrated attempt to not put the blame in the right spot and try to back away from truly putting the blame for this kind of political violence into the hands of the people who are continuing to drive it and have had a history of driving it since the start of this entire movement in 2016 when Donald Trump went down the escalator. And of course, having mentioned the word Trump, that is the basic reason and the start of all of this political violence that has led up to the murders of the Hortmans, as well as the way the government in the United States is currently carrying out its destruction of democracy. So I wanted to talk about here and show you with regard to what I'm saying about the local affiliates here in Minneapolis, just like the national news affiliates ABC, CBS, NBC, both citing an issue like this politically, is how in a situation like this, we're discussing Vance Boelter and his motivations, how it seems that the initial talk here, especially as things were unfolding a couple of weeks ago, centered around how it seemed that the rhetoric on both sides, the left and the right, apparently was contributing to this, or at least was the thing that was being blamed in this particular clip. Here is WCCO news anchor Heather Brown and news anchor Derek James, and they begin to discuss what they feel to be the political atmosphere in the country and how they think it's contributed to what Boelter carried out.
In Washington, D.C., we just got through a very, as you mentioned, a very divided session where some difficult words were said between both parties. And it just feels, and I mentioned this to Senator Duckworth, a Republican from Lakeville, our state senator here, it just feels like we are not doing a great job of coming together.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's one of the reasons that Representative Emmer and McCollum and Senator Smith and myself and our entire delegation.
When Heather is talking about the difficult session here in the state of Minnesota, she was talking about the budget that was recently just hammered through regarding Democrats and Republicans and the difficulties that they went through. And the district department was, being the speaker, was in large part handling those negotiations. But more to the point, the legislation that was passed through in the budget resolution that was passed here in Minnesota. The battle that went on between MAGAs, who are former Republicans, now I just call them MAGAs, and Democrats, is typical of what's going on in most states of the country. And the difficulties that are coming from as far as rhetoric and vitriol and the difficulties being presented in all of these budget meetings and clashes is coming from the MAGA side. They're the ones who are trying to destroy government. They're trying to censor free speech. They're trying to destroy minority people and disabled people and their ability to function as normal citizens in those states. And they're trying to tear down everything that we've come to know as functional government here. And to say that this issue is a two-sided left and right kind of thing, to me, is not trying to get to the point, and it's not really trying to seek what largely has happened here and contributed to the murders. The battle because of the fact that the actual motivations and the type of violent vitriol and rhetoric has come from the MAGA side, including Donald Trump. And here is another affiliate here, KARE 11 News, talking about, this is after when the manhunt was on, and they had the media, both national and local, had come to Boelter's partial residence here, where he had lived with roommates on a couple of occasions a week when he was running around doing whatever it was he had his fingers and hooks into, which to me looks very suspicious because all the things that he was drifting around doing and getting involved in, and very unstable. And when this particular reporter begins to talk about what Carlson told her, it seems to be very sanitized and sane-washed. And it seems like David Carlson's just trying to rationalize everything that he has seen, or at least what he wants to say, or tell everybody about what he thinks of his friend Vance Boelter.
David Carlson, his roommate, went inside for us when I asked him, hey, can you show us that book he wrote? Apparently he had written a book about the church, and that overall he was a very good guy. His roommates, his friend, clearly just dumbfounded at the events that have happened today and the events that are now being linked to their roommate. David Carlson could not walk out with any book that he was talking about, and that was because police had already come and gone, and they had taken a lot of his items, presumably as evidence. And you can see some people walking inside right now as we speak here. We even asked about Mr. Boelter's political affiliations, and David Carlson, once again his roommate and best friend, known him since 4th grade, did say Boelter voted for Trump and that he was a strong supporter, but he hasn't really talked about politics lately. And from what his friend knew, he had no idea that Boelter was interested at all in local or state lawmakers as well. His friend didn't even know the names of the lawmakers who were attacked today. He had no idea, the friend had no idea of Boelter even going to the state capitol. Once again, he never talked about state lawmakers. And that is some of the political affiliations that he told us about. Although he did have some ties in the Congo, apparently he flew out to D.C. to meet with an official from the Congo.
Now, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that David Carlson didn't know a thing about what Vance Boelter was planning, where he was going, what he was up to, who he was going after, and exactly what it was that he was trying to carry out. But this notion where Carlson seems to aw shucks everything and make it look like Vance Boelter was just a regular guy who just had no idea that he was planning anything of this sort. Went to the church, wrote a book about his spirituality, among other things, and basically just making it seem like that he was had no idea what that there was any extremism or there was anything unusual about what it was that Vance Boelter thought, and trying to make it seem like it just was not any real big deal and it came as a shock to him. And what amazes me about that is the fact that when you look at the beliefs that drove and motivated Vance Boelter, they are purely MAGA motivations and beliefs. And anybody who is around him, well, for example, David Carlson, a Trump supporter. If you're voting for Trump and you are also, for example, his wife, who said she had no clue, came out of nowhere, had absolutely no idea he was planning anything like this. It's a total shock to them, and it's a totally against whatever it is that they believe as Christians. If you are a MAGA, and you are a Christian, and you are voting MAGA, you are sanctioning the types of violent rhetoric and vitriol, and the types of human-hating beliefs and bigotry that fuels the kinds of things that the Vance Boelters of the world want to carry out. As a further demonstration of this, here is Carlson talking about abortion. This is Fox 9 when they interviewed him on the day during the manhunt was going on.
To the military stuff, but it was just we were always like that. Me and him, we used to play army men.
How long had you guys known each other?
Since fourth grade. It's been 45 years, 50 years. God, it's been longer than that. Yeah, it must have been longer than that. Since
my fame on camera. Yeah, no, I was going to say that.
Since I was 12, probably. Fourth grade. Forever we've been friends.
Yeah.
And then,
did you link him up with this house to live with you? Were you excited about that when 2 years ago?
well, he's been living up here for a while.
Oh,
He was living in Bloomington. He's a manager of a food place.
yeah.
And then he quit the job and he went down to Africa, got things going down there, said he wanted to start his own companies.
So the security company, was that fully formed, or was that just an idea
that
still?
was just some fantasy. It was you talk about it, but there was no movement on that part.
So there's the oh golly gee shucks kind of moments where I'm talking about, where we see Carlson just sort of just sort of passing off what he and Boelter usually discuss, or what kinds of things they talked about. Here he knows this guy for 45 years of his life, but doesn't know a thing about any kind of extremist political views or political affiliations. Everything's just fine. He hated abortion in the 90s, or he hated abortion, but we didn't really talk about it a whole lot. We didn't go through over political views. He never said a whole lot of anything to me about what he actually felt. And it just seems like if you are a reporter and you are doing your job here and you're looking into and you're understanding that the type of atmosphere that we're living in today, and what is going on in this country, that your first thought would be digging further and deeper into where all of this came from that drove Boelter to do this. That being rooted in MAGA and Donald Trump types of rhetoric and behavior. And then to sort of listen to what he's saying, but then not ever really try to drill down deeper and not catch on to that it sounds very much like he is just trying to pass everything off and not make it look like any of the political affiliations that Boelter had were contributors to this. We go over to also Fox 9 in Minneapolis.
Down
similar
again,
kind of thing.
With the roommate that I spoke with before, I learned a little bit more information. David Carlson has known Vance Boelter for 40 plus years. They met in the 4th grade. So that's how Vance got kind of connected to this location here in Minneapolis. He said that he didn't really hold a lot of really strong political beliefs, but he was staunchly anti-abortion. So that is a view that he really knew of. Okay, so
that's as far as Carlson wanted to go with it. As far as at least from this reporter's point of view, she continues a little bit further in the evening news report here after the day is wrapped up.
Okay, Mary, what have you learned here?
Well, Karen, I think the big question for everyone is what would lead someone to do this? You know, what in their life might spark them to go on this violent rampage? And while we don't have the answers to that question right now, we are learning more about what was happening in Vance Boelter's life leading up.
Well, I have to personally disagree. If we're thinking about that question, knowing what we knew way back 2 weeks ago on this very day, what Carlson had said about Boelter being a Trump supporter, what Carlson had said about his anti-abortion stance, what we've seen about regarding the videos over in Africa and the Congo, with Boelter doing sermons for the Christ for Nations church, and then his LGBTQ stances, as well as the things that he basically stood for as a person who was involved in nationalist extremist politics. And you can pretty much draw a conclusion, or at least make an inference, that there is some deeply held motivation from the MAGA beliefs and MAGA side of the aisle here. There's a Fortune magazine story that came out on the very day that this manhunt was ongoing, and these same reporters were interviewing David Carlson. And it talks about how, according to his website for his company, Praetorian Guard Security Services, Boelter is listed as Director of Security Patrols, while his wife is listed as President and CEO. So, and that being the head of that company, and being on that website, there appeared the same police cruiser, the same vehicle, the one in which the decals, the fake police vehicle with the lights, the one that he placed the decals on to make it look like it was an actual police cruiser. And so this whole thing about Carlson and what he was talking about, how he was trying to sort of fend off everybody and make sure that things sort of were soft-pedaled and didn't sound as bad as they actually could have been, actually were with regard to Boelter, says this company was just a fantasy. And in reality, the company was real, and apparently Boelter was running the company. And the big takeaway here is that the media, in talking about Boelter and talking with David Carlson, seem to talk to him and seem to have the same types of interviews. And the real fascinating thing with regard to how this story is being covered is there's an AP story that came up basically a few days after everyone was interviewing him. And this reporter, you see the photo here. All of these reporters talked to Carlson. All of them had a chance to ask him the same questions. He talked to them publicly, and some of them privately. And all of a sudden, out of all of those reporters and national reporters, the AP comes out with a story. It says that that Carlson admitted that Boelter had a darkness inside of him. The guy with the mask, I don't know that guy, Carlson said in a telephone interview with Associated Press, recounting his decades-long friendship with a man he likened to a brother. Boelter's involvement in such an attack, he said, was as surprising to him as getting struck by lightning. There was a darkness that was inside of him, Carlson said. He must have kept it hidden. As authorities piece together Boelter's movements and motivations, Carlson and others are conducting their own inventory of their interactions with the one-time pastor, wondering whether they missed any red flags. Boelter is the married father of 5, but often stayed at Carlson's home in Minneapolis to shorten his commute to work. In hindsight, Carlson said Boelter was a sick man and needed help, even if those around him didn't realize it in time. So, how is it that we have all these reporters flocking Carlson, getting basically a chance, hearing the same types of stories, getting all ask questions, and all of a sudden in a telephone interview, an AP reporter then comes out with Carlson admitting that his buddy had a darkness inside of him. Why was that covered? Why was it so difficult for anybody else to be forthcoming about that particular side of what Carlson was saying? And what was it that prevented them from actually getting to the point where they asked those questions? And the answer to me would be they are trying to, or attempting here to sort of smooth out the issue so that they don't have to admit that MAGA is driving this, and that Donald Trump is really, his rhetoric is what's behind all of this. A man who has said many violent things on many occasions, and just the other day, Donald Trump put out another Truth Social post where he said he was once the hunted, now he's the hunter. There's another instance, it's probably the 40th or 50th instance of him uttering violent rhetoric. How can you, as a reporter, see what just took place, talk to a man who was a lifelong friend of the person who's a suspect, and then not try to get to the bottom of what is so obvious, a violent type of political ideology driven by violent political forces, unless you are purposefully, at least consciously trying not to get to the bottom of the issue so that you don't cause too much of a problem, cause too much of an uproar, and make sure that you don't offend Donald Trump. Just wanted to go back and briefly touch on again what Heather Brown said about we need to come together when she was interviewing Amy Klobuchar. And if you are trying to fight against a political affiliation that is threatening not only your survival, but the survival of the very democracy that you live in, there's no coming together. There has to be resistance, and there has to be a pushback and even, yes, fighting. That may sound like violent rhetoric coming from me, but we're talking about civil disobedience, nonviolent resistance. We're not the ones talking about those kinds of things that are coming from the mouths of MAGAs. And so, to further demonstrate that in my next video, I am going to back up what I say here in regard to Vance Boelter and where his motivations come from by looking into the Christian nationalist extremist movement that defines the majority of MAGA, and particularly the evangelicals, in conjunction with white supremacy, with Donald Trump being the cherry on top because he is the vehicle through which all of these forces act. And we just don't know how many Vance Boelters there are out there. My name is Scott Schneider, and I am fed up in Minnesota.